So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the TCA could be terminated if the UK quits the European Court of Human Rights, or the European Convention of Human Rights over small boats crossings, and this is pretty nasty work here. So the UK's trade agreements with the EU could be immediately terminated if the British government quits the European Convention on Human Rights over the issue of stopping small boat crossings across the Channel, legal experts have said. So this is around asylum seekers crossing the English Channel. Steve Pears, a professor of EU and human rights law, says, quote, if the UK left the ECHR or denounces all or part of it, it's fairly clear that the EU would suspend the police and security agreement, end quote. He said, pointing out that the TCA locks Britain into a number of provisions relating to Human Rights Convention as a standard on policing. The issue here is that the UK has kind of denounced the ECHR. The EU haven't done anything yet, but we haven't made any real significant moves to kind of decouple ourselves from the ECHR. So I can see why they're willing to wait a bit longer. And there's a few points to discuss here. The article jumps from the TCA could be fully terminated, at least that's the impression I get from the headline and first paragraph, to parts of the security and police aspects might be suspended. More importantly, the membership of the ECHR, this is over. That membership is integral to the Good Friday Agreement, so the UK would be in breach if we left the ECHR. So that would open a Pandora's box you really don't want to open. You probably have more luck fighting the God of War at that point. This is why I can't see the UK leaving the ECHR, because it'll be an absolute minefield after that. It would make cross-border law enforcement harder and mean suspects facing extradition to Britain would have a legal defence open to them with arguments like their human rights were at risk. And that means extraditions from kind of EU members would be difficult for crimes that happen in Britain, which in itself would be a nightmare and very expensive just to get them over here. And the situation is it's already difficult because we don't have access to the EU databases on crime. This makes it, or crime and kind of any kind of evidence they have against people. This makes it difficult for the British police force to operate on certain threats, but we don't have a divine right to those databases. This is another Brexit impact. So I would imagine that Norway would be a country that potentially pays into a certain EU service in order to get access to these sorts of databases if they wanted access. And databases are expensive, and we don't pay anything in to get access. Catherine Bernard, a professor of EU law at the University of Cambridge, said, quote, it is clear that the EU absolutely had it in mind that the UK might try and leave the convention, and respect for it runs through the TCA like writing through a stick of rock, end quote. And I'm not sure what she means exactly by the end bit. Some context is missing. But clearly there was a fear that the UK could leave the ECHR, so the EU wanted to be ready with some sort of tool to try and possibly prevent it, or at least possibly punish the UK over it. One of the reasons human rights is included in trade deals is because you don't want to be importing goods made by slave labour, because it puts you at a disadvantage in terms of making goods. Not that, it's not really because of altruistic reasons. People get it twisted that human rights pieces are put into trade agreements because of altruistic reasons. It's not the case. Article 524 of the TCA states the agreement, which was struck by the UK's then chief negotiator Lord Frost, the Iceman himself, and the EU, is based on both parties' quote long-standing respect for democracy, the rule of law, and the protection of fundamental rights, end quote, including those in the convention. And these things are a bit wishy-washy. The phrase is used. You could argue now with the anti-protest bill, the gerrymandering, that these things have already been broken. At least the respect for democracy bits. You can also argue about the asylum seeker bills they're passing as well. You can argue that the UK is in breach right now. Whether you want to make that argument is up to you. Article 692 provides for a 9-month notice of termination of the law enforcement and judicial cooperation, part of the TCA, by either party, but allows for an immediate termination effective on the day either party leaves the ECHR or a date, quote, the denunciation, end quote, of its principles become effective. So effectively, if we leave, or if we kind of leave in, if we leave, then we can be punished, or if we just kind of ignore rulings, I think we can also be punished there, basically rendering the court ineffective. And if this is the case, the UK should know what the consequences are. Losing the TCA would be the least of our concerns, as we discussed above. Threats to denounce the convention have already caused concern at the UN and among a delegation of German MPs who sit on the Bundestag's European Affairs Committee, who are visiting their UK counterparts in Westminster, saying, quote, "We have noted the reaction of the United Nations and they are really concerned about what's going on," end quote, said Anton, the chair of the committee, telling reporters in London. He goes on to say, quote, "We also have some strange comments about people you talk to. For example, one comment that we have left the European Union, so the Court of Human Rights does not apply to us, but they have nothing to do with each other," end quote. And, this person here is absolutely right. It does show you how dumb people are in, I want to say in Britain, but it's not predominantly people in Britain. It's people in a certain country in the United Kingdom. People conflating the ECHR with the EU, they share one common thing, which is they both start with the letter E. The level of discourse is just shameful. But yeah, people really don't understand the ECHR. We haven't left the ECHR, we're still a part of it. So probably because these people don't understand most things. In a statement issued on Tuesday afternoon, the UNHCR said such legislation would, quote, "amount to an asylum ban, ellipses, no matter how genuine and compelling," end quote, individual cases may be. The quote, "the effect of the bill would deny protection to many asylum seekers in need of safety and protection and even deny them the opportunity to put forward their case. This would be a clear breach of the refugee conventions and would undermine a long-standing humanitarian tradition of which the British people are rightly proud. We urge the government and all MPs and peers to consider the bill and instead pursue more humane and practical policy solutions," end quote. And that's the UNHCR saying this. And you can see the concern from the EU and basically the condemnation from the UN here. We really are the sick man of Europe, a title held by Russia, Turkey, and the UK in previous years. But we're back again, the title holders. Other countries struggle to be us because we're world beating. But close to a full, but this is close to a full ban on asylum seekers. Given that for most refugees you have to be in the UK to claim asylum here. You can't get here via a plane because they won't give you access. The border force will stop you. You can't get here by boat because effectively they've ruled that illegal. So this is a de facto ban on most asylum seekers because you can't apply for asylum via an embassy. You have to be physically in the UK. That doesn't apply to refugees from, I think it's Hong Kong, Afghanistan and Ukraine. It's definitely Ukraine and Hong Kong. Afghanistan might be a bit more difficult because of the fact the Taliban run it now. But for the other refugees, you have to be physically in the UK to claim asylum. And there's only one way to get here, really, is you have to cross the English Channel. So they've made it so this is the only way to get here, and then they've closed that off as well. So I can see why the UNHCR would be concerned. And I will be interested to see how much more condemnation we get from other countries and international institutions. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.